The day my husband left me, I was standing in our kitchen with one hand resting on my stomach. I was 6 months pregnant. I still remember the sound of the clock on the wall. Tick, 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 tick. Every second felt louder than the one before. Daniel stood across from me with a suitcase beside his feet. He wasn't crying, he wasn't angry, he wasn't even ashamed. He simply looked tired, as if leaving his pregnant wife was an inconvenience he had already decided to get over. I stared at him, waiting for him to say something that would make sense. "Daniel, where are you going?" He looked away. "I think you already know." "No," I whispered. "I don't." He took a slow breath. "I'm leaving." My hand tightened around my stomach. "Leaving where?" He finally looked at me. "Leaving this marriage for a moment." I couldn't speak. I actually thought I had misunderstood him. Maybe he meant he needed space. Maybe he was angry. Maybe we were having another one of those terrible arguments married couples sometimes have. But then he said the sentence that changed my entire life. "I'm going to be with someone else." My heart seemed to stop. "Someone else?" He nodded. "Her name is Victoria." I laughed, not because it was funny, because sometimes your mind doesn't know what else to do when reality becomes too painful. "You're leaving me for another woman?" "I'm sorry." "No, you're not." He looked uncomfortable. That was when I knew. He wasn't sorry. He was only sorry that he had to watch me react. I stepped closer. "Daniel, I'm pregnant, I know. Our baby is due in 3 months, I know. You promised me you'd be here, I know." My voice broke. "Then how can you do this?" He looked down. "I've changed." Those 2 words hurt more than anything else. Not because people can't change, but because he used them as an excuse to abandon the woman who had stood beside him when he had nothing. I had been there when Daniel lost his job. I had sold my jewelry to help pay our bills. I had worked extra hours while he searched for work. I had believed in him when even he had stopped believing in himself. And now, when life was finally beginning to become stable, he had decided that I was no longer the woman he wanted. He picked up his suitcase. I blocked the door. "At least tell me why." He hesitated. Then he said something I would never forget. "Victoria makes me feel like I'm becoming someone important." I stared at him. "And I don't?" He didn't answer. I moved aside. He walked past me. He didn't touch my shoulder. He didn't kiss my forehead. He didn't even look at my stomach. He just walked out. The front door closed. And I stood there alone, pregnant, heartbroken, terrified, and completely unaware that years later, the same man who had walked away from me would stand in front of my door and ask me for help. But by then, Abby would no longer be the woman he left behind. The first night without Daniel, I barely slept. I sat on the edge of our bed and stared at his empty side. His pillow was still there. His jacket was still hanging behind the door. His coffee mug was still on the kitchen counter. Everything looked normal, except my husband was gone. I kept asking myself the same question. Why wasn't I enough? That question became a prison. Every morning, I woke up and wondered what Victoria had that I didn't. Was she prettier? Smarter? More exciting? Did she make more money? Did she know how to make him happier? I hated myself for thinking that way, but heartbreak doesn't always make you logical. Sometimes it makes you compare yourself to a stranger you've never even met. Then one morning, I received a message. It was from Daniel. "I'm sorry you're going through this. I'll send money when I can." I stared at the screen. That was it. No question about the baby. No, how are you? No, do you need anything? Just money. As if the life we had built together could be reduced to a monthly payment. I didn't respond. 3 days later, his mother called. Her name was Margaret. She had always been kind to me. "Emma, sweetheart, are you okay?" The moment I heard her voice, I started crying. "I don't know." She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "I tried talking to him." "Does he regret it?" Another silence. "Not yet." Those words hurt. But they also gave me something. Clarity. If Daniel wasn't going to come back, I couldn't spend the rest of my pregnancy waiting for him. So I made a decision. I would stop waiting. I would raise my child. I would work, I would survive, and I would never beg Daniel to choose me again. The next 3 months were the hardest months of my life. I worked during the day. At night, I prepared for the baby. Sometimes I cried while folding tiny clothes. Sometimes I sat in the nursery and imagined what it would be like when my daughter finally arrived. Yes, a daughter. I found out during my final scan. I named her Lily. I chose the name because it reminded me of something beautiful growing in a difficult place. When Lily was born, I held her against my chest and cried. Not because I was sad, because I had finally found something worth fighting for. I looked at her tiny face. "Mommy's here," I whispered, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt needed. I felt strong. Daniel wasn't there. Victoria wasn't there. But my daughter was, and she became my reason to keep going. The first year was brutal. There were nights when Lily wouldn't sleep. There were mornings when I was exhausted before the day even started. There were bills stacked on the kitchen table. There were days when I wondered how I was going to make everything work. But I did. I found a better job. I started taking online business classes at night. I learned things I never thought I could learn: accounting, marketing, and management. I started a small consulting business from my apartment. At first, I had only 2 clients, then 5, then 10. Slowly, something changed. I stopped thinking about Daniel, not completely, but less. And then one afternoon, almost 2 years after he left, I saw a photograph of him online. He was standing beside Victoria. They were dressed beautifully. Behind them was a luxury hotel. The caption said, "New Beginnings." I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I closed the page. I didn't cry. That surprised me. 2 years earlier, that picture would have destroyed me. Now it simply felt like information about people I used to know. Later that evening, Lily asked me something. "Mommy, why don't I have a daddy?" I froze. She was 4 years old by then, old enough to notice. I sat beside her. "Your daddy lives somewhere else? Does he love me?" That question broke my heart. I took her hand. "I don't know what is in his heart." She looked confused. "But I love you enough for 2 people," she smiled. "That's okay." And somehow, that little sentence healed something inside me. Years passed. My business grew. I moved into a small house, then a bigger one. I hired employees. I became financially independent. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had something Daniel had never understood: peace. Meanwhile, Daniel's life looked perfect from the outside, at least according to social media. Luxury dinners, expensive vacations, business events, photographs with Victoria. But I knew something about photographs. They only show what people want you to see. Then, 5 years after Daniel left, something strange happened. A letter arrived at my office. It was from Daniel. I almost threw it away. But something made me open it. There were only 3 lines. "Emma, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you. Please." I stared at the words. My first reaction was anger. My second was curiosity. But I didn't respond. 2 days later, he came to my office, and when I saw him standing outside my door, I barely recognized the man who had once walked away from me. Daniel looked older, not just physically. There was something different in his eyes. He looked tired. The confidence he once carried was gone. He stood in my doorway, holding his jacket in one hand. "Emma." I looked at him. "Daniel." Neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He entered. He looked around my office. Photographs covered one wall. Awards sat on a shelf. Employees were working outside. My company logo was displayed behind my desk. He looked at everything. Then he looked at me. "You did all this?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "I'm proud of you." I almost laughed. "You don't get to be proud of me." His face tightened. "I deserve that." "Why are you here?" He sat down. "I need help." There it was, the reason. Not because he missed me, not because he suddenly understood my worth. He needed something. "What kind of help?" He hesitated. "My company is in trouble." I leaned back. "That's unfortunate." "I'm serious." "So am I." He looked down. I made some bad decisions. I almost smiled. That's one way to describe it. His voice became quieter. I trusted the wrong people. Victoria. His eyes lifted. He didn't answer. That was enough. I waited. Finally, he said, "She left." I felt nothing. Not happiness, not satisfaction, nothing. How long ago? 8 months. I nodded. And now you need me. I need your expertise. I stared at him. You remember what I studied. I remember everything. No, Daniel. He looked at me. You remember what benefits you. Silence filled the room. Then he said, I deserve that too. For the first time, I saw something that looked like regret. But regret was not an apology, and an apology was not forgiveness. He explained what had happened. His company had grown quickly. He had borrowed money, made risky investments, trusted people he shouldn't have trusted, then everything collapsed. Now he was facing a massive financial problem. If I don't fix it within 3 months, I'll lose everything. I folded my hands. And what exactly do you want from me? I want you to help restructure the company. I shook my head. No. His face fell. Emma, please. No, I'll pay you. That's not the point. Then what is? I looked straight into his eyes. You left me when I needed you. He swallowed. You left me pregnant. I know. You didn't even stay long enough to see your daughter. His eyes filled with emotion. I know. You made your choice, he whispered. I was wrong. I stood up. You were. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he asked the question I never expected. Can I meet Lily? I froze. Everything inside me became still. This wasn't about business anymore. This was about my daughter. And I wasn't ready to answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lily was 12 years old. She had grown into a bright, kind, confident girl. She knew Daniel existed, but she didn't know him. I had never lied to her. I simply refused to poison her childhood with bitterness. Now I had to decide whether to let him enter her life. The next morning, I sat with Lily at breakfast. There is something I want to tell you. She looked up. What? Your father came to see me. Her spoon stopped. My father, I nodded. What does he want? He wants to meet you. She was silent, then she asked, Why now? I didn't know how to answer. Because he says he's sorry. She looked at me. Are you going to forgive him? I smiled sadly. Forgiveness is complicated. Do you hate him? I took a breath. No. Why not? Because carrying hate takes too much energy. She thought about it. Do you want me to meet him? I reached across the table. What do you want? She stared at her hands. I want to know who he is. My heart hurt. But I respected her decision, so I arranged a meeting. A small cafe, public 1 hour. Nothing more. Daniel arrived early. When Lily walked in, he stood immediately. He looked at her and froze. I had seen Daniel cry only once in our marriage. That day, I saw it again. He whispered, She's beautiful. Lily looked at him carefully. Hi, Daniel smiled through tears. Hi, Lily. They sat across from each other. At first, the conversation was awkward. He asked about school. She told him about her favorite subject. He asked what she liked to do. She told him about drawing. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Why did you leave? Daniel looked at me. I said nothing. This was his moment. He could lie. He could make excuses. He could blame circumstances. Instead, he said, Because I was selfish. Lily stared at him. I thought I wanted a different life. Did you love Mom? He closed his eyes briefly. Yes. Then why did you leave? Because sometimes people make terrible choices even when they love someone. Lily nodded slowly. Then she asked, Did you love me? Daniel's face broke. Yes. But you didn't come back. I was ashamed. Lily looked down. You should have been. I almost gasped. Daniel didn't get angry. He nodded. You're right. The meeting ended after an hour. Outside the cafe, Daniel stopped me. Thank you. For what? For letting me meet her. I looked at him. Don't mistake one meeting for forgiveness. I won't. Then he walked away, and for the first time, I wondered whether Daniel's regret was real. But I also knew something else. His regret couldn't become my responsibility. A week later, Daniel returned. He had prepared everything I needed to review his company. financial statements, Kontenkracts, debt records, applet lists, investment reports. I spent 2 nights studying them. The situation was worse than he had admitted. Much worse. Someone had been moving money from the company. Large amounts. I called Daniel. Who handles your financial accounts? My CFO name. Marcus. How long has he worked for you? 6 years. Did you trust him? Completely. I looked at the records. You shouldn't have. Daniel came to my office the next morning. I showed him what I found. He stared at the numbers. That's impossible. No, I would have noticed. Not if you trusted him. He sat down. How much? I gave him the number. His face went pale. He's been stealing from the company. Looks like it. Daniel leaned back. Can you fix this? Maybe. What do you need? Full control of the restructuring process. He nodded. And I want everything documented. Fine. One more thing. What? You don't lie to me. He nodded. I won't. Not about money. Not about Victoria. Not about anything. He looked embarrassed. I stood. Then I'll help you. It wasn't because I loved him. It wasn't because I wanted revenge. It was because I wanted to prove something to myself. Years ago, Daniel had walked away believing I was the person who needed him. Now he was sitting across from me because he needed the person I had become without him. The work began, and slowly I discovered just how deep his problems went. Marcus wasn't the only one. There were bad contracts, debts, fake invoices, business partners who had taken advantage of Daniel. And then I found something else. A transfer connected to Victoria. I printed the document. Daniel stared at it. She took money? Yes. How much? I told him. He looked shattered. Why? I shrugged. You said you trusted her. He covered his face. For a few seconds, I felt a small sense of satisfaction, but it disappeared quickly. Because this wasn't revenge. This was simply the truth. And the truth was enough. 3 weeks into the restructuring, Daniel asked me to meet him privately. I need to tell you something. I looked up from my laptop. About the company? No. Then what? He hesitated. About the day I left. I leaned back. I already know. You don't. He looked nervous. Victoria didn't just appear in my life. I waited. She had been working with one of my business partners. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? Everything, he explained. Years ago, before he left, he had been offered a major business opportunity. The investor wanted him to become a partner. But there was a condition. He needed to separate his personal life from what they considered an unstable situation. Daniel had believed them. He believed leaving me would make him look more successful. Victoria had encouraged him. She told him that I was holding him back. She told him that successful men needed successful partners. And Daniel listened. I stared at him. So you left me because someone told you I wasn't good enough? He looked down. Yes. I shook my head. No, Daniel. He looked up. You left because you believed them, he nodded. I know. You chose money over your family. I know. You chose a fantasy over reality. I know. And now that fantasy is gone, you came back to the woman you once thought was holding you back. He didn't defend himself. He simply said, yes. That honesty hurt more than an excuse would have. I looked out the window. You know what the saddest part is? What? I spent years wondering what was wrong with me. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. There was never anything wrong with you. I know that now. Silence, then he said, I wish I could go back. You can't. I know. And that's the price of your choice. He nodded. I deserve it. For the first time, I believed him. 2 months later, we had stabilized most of the company. The debts were being renegotiated. The stolen funds had been traced. Marcus was removed. Several contracts were canceled. Daniel's company was finally breathing again. But then I found something that changed everything. There was one account we hadn't reviewed, a private investment account. It contained money Daniel had transferred years earlier. I called him. What is this? He looked at the document. His face changed. I forgot about that. You forgot about an account with nearly $500,000. I thought it was closed. It isn't. He looked confused. Whose name is on it? I pointed Victoria. Daniel went silent. Then he laughed bitterly. Of course. I studied the account. There was a recent withdrawal. All the money was gone. She emptied it. Daniel stared at the screen. She knew about it, apparently. He leaned back. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he said something unexpected. Keep it. I frowned. What? The money? I can't. It's legally yours. Why? Because the account was funded with money I was supposed to use for Lily. I stared at him. Daniel, I should have supported her. He took a breath. Please use it for her future. I didn't answer immediately. Part of me wanted to reject it. Part of me wanted to tell him he couldn't buy forgiveness. But I knew he wasn't trying to buy anything. For once, he was simply trying to do something right. I accepted the money. Not for me, for Lily, a college fund. Something her father should have created years ago. That night, I told Lily. She looked at me. Did Dad give you this? Yes, for me, yes. She smiled. Maybe he's finally learning. I smiled back. Maybe. But there was still one thing I needed to know. Why had Daniel really come back? Was it only because he needed help? Or was there something else? I didn't have to wait long, because the next day he told me, Daniel came to my house. He stood on the porch. I need to ask you something. I opened the door wider. What? He looked nervous. Would you ever consider giving us another chance? I stared at him. He continued quickly. I'm not asking you to forget everything. Good. I'm not asking you to pretend the past didn't happen. Good. I just want to know if there's any chance. I looked at the man standing in front of me, the man I had once loved, the man who had broken my heart, the father of my daughter, and the answer came easily. No. He closed his eyes. I could see the pain on his face, but he didn't argue. He nodded. I understand. I stepped outside. Daniel, I want you to understand something. He looked at me. I don't hate you. I know. I don't want revenge. I know. But that doesn't mean I want you back. He nodded. You changed. No, I corrected him. I healed. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled sadly. That's better. We stood quietly. Then he asked, Can I still be Lily's father? I thought about it. That's up to Lily. He nodded. I'll respect that. And he did. Over the next year, he slowly became part of Lily's life. Not as my husband, not as the man who had once abandoned us, but as her father. He attended school events. He remembered her birthday. He helped with college applications. He showed up, not perfectly, but consistently. And slowly, Lily stopped seeing him as a stranger. That was enough. As for me, I kept building my life. My company grew. I bought a new house. I traveled. I made friends. I learned how to enjoy my own company. And eventually, I met someone new. His name was Michael. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't rich. He didn't make grand promises. He simply showed up. When he said he'd call, he called. When he said he'd be there, he was there. And that taught me something. Love isn't always the person who makes your heart beat fastest. Sometimes love is the person who makes you feel safe enough to breathe.